All right. Well, today's presentation is going to proceed as follows. I'm going to give a presentation that goes into quite a bit of detail about the overall situation, academically, extracurricularly, et cetera, of YCA. That'll take about 35, maybe 40 minutes. After that, we're happy to be joined by two YCA alumni. We have Gary Xie, who graduated from Georgetown University for his undergrad and was a member of the 2019 cohort of Yenching scholars. And joining us soon will be Emily Vincent from the 2018 cohort and a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. Each of our alumni will have 10 or 15 minutes to share their experiences, their sort of motivations for applying, their experiences in the program, and what they're doing now. Peking University is the finest institution of higher education in China. It was founded in 1898, as the Jingshi Daxuetang, part of a ultimately failed reform movement near the end of the final imperial dynasty in Chinese history, the Qing dynasty. However, even though it was failed, one of the lasting legacies was the precursor to Peking University. You can see a bird's eye view of our campus on the right here. If you're familiar with Beijing, we're located in the northwest sector of the city, in between the tech hub Zhongguancun to the north, to our south, and to the west is the sort of center of college student life in Beijing, the Wudaokou neighborhood. Some more shots of PKU's lovely campus. Right now is the autumn in Beijing, which unfortunately tends to be the shortest of all the seasons, but it's also the loveliest in my opinion. I'd like to point your attention to Weiming Lake down in the bottom left. This is one of the most scenic and definitely the most photographed location on campus. Jingyuan Courtyard is where the Yenching Academy has our administration building, our teaching building, as well as our large multimedia lecture hall and sort of large event spaces. It is a very historically and culturally significant portion of Peking University's campus. When it was originally built in 1926 to 1927, it was the core of the campus of a previous university, Yenching University. Although we share the same buildings and at least one of the same words in our name, it's important to emphasize that Yenching University was not connected to Peking University when it was active from 1916 to 1952. When Yenching University closed, PKU moved from our former campus up to the campus that we all know and love today. It's really a beautiful place to live, to work, and to study. It's such a beautiful place to live that we now have an unofficial mascot. You can see the cat there on the left. Fengzhua has adopted Jingyuan Courtyard 3, our administration building. PKU today has over 11,000 faculty members that are divided into 51 different departments and schools, plus 10 national key laboratories. This faculty, along with our dedicated professional staff, serve over 46,000 full-time students and over 4,000 international students. So what is YCA? Well, we are a 2-year fully funded master's program in China studies. We study today's China, how China has changed over the last several decades of reform and opening, how these changes have affected Chinese society, Chinese culture, economy, political system, multifaceted look at the domestic changes that have happened to China over the last several decades, and how those changes are altering China's role in the world. Having run the, the admission system for 3 years now, and having had the great fortune to teach about 5 different courses to Yenching scholars, I personally attest that those who join our program as Yenching scholars are outstanding. They are interesting, they are interested in China, they come from different backgrounds, and they're definitely going interesting places in their lives and in their careers. We're also part of an interesting experiment of bringing the best practices of interdisciplinary teaching methods and research methods to the already very, highly structured system of Chinese higher education at the graduate level. And we're also part of defining what China studies as an academic discipline means, especially when China studies is conducted in, taught by the best professors at China's best university. And then this last bullet point, a catalyst for international dialogue, sounds like we're laying it on pretty heavy with this talking point. But when you have interesting classmates and colleagues from around the world, different backgrounds, nationally, culturally, religiously, professionally, and educationally, but all interested in better understanding China, you'll find that the readings you do in classes, the lectures you hear, the discussions you participate in will lead to international dialogue, whether it's in the classroom, in the dormitory, or on campus. Okay, we are a sort of residential program. What that means is all first-year Yenching scholars are required to live together on campus in the Yenching Academy House. This is a dormitory reserved for Yenching scholars that has been nicely renovated. For international scholars, that means you can be off campus in Beijing for your second year, and you can receive a housing stipend for your second year. For scholars from the Chinese mainland and Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, however, they are required to live on campus in the dormitory for both years. The language of instruction and administration at YCA is English. No prior proficiency in Chinese language is required for admission. That having been said, since we're a China Studies Master's program that's highly competitive and fully funded, if you have Chinese language proficiency or academic engagement or training and related to China Studies, please emphasize that in your application. It could be a competitive advantage. So we encourage our students to get outside of the YCA bubble, so to speak, not just socially, but also academically. We encourage students to take classes taught in other departments and schools around the university. Now, for most international students, that's going to mean English taught courses. But if you have a high level of proficiency or you're a native speaker, we do encourage you to take content courses taught in Chinese. A fascinating opportunity, but also a very big challenge. Let's talk funding. So the Yenching Fellowship includes full tuition payment. It includes for year one, accommodation in the Yenching Academy House. For year two, if you are an international scholar, you can get 3,000 renminbi a month to live off campus. That's sufficient for a single room, a private room in a shared apartment. But considering Beijing's rents, that's not really going to be enough for a individual solo apartment for you. So monthly stipend for living expenses of 3,000 RMB per month. That's going to be about $650, $700 US a month. We pay for round trip travel from your home base to and from Beijing in your first year. And then you have a basic medical insurance. It's a specific health insurance plan designed for international students living and studying in China. This is a very big investment, and we make not only in individual Yenching scholars, but in the entire program. When you take into account, we have about 120 students per year, and we have 2 years of students in the program at any given time. So, although you should think about this as a 2-year fully funded master's program, you should know that we have an academic performance review at the end of your first year, and it's in the first year that you take all of your coursework. We have some very clear performance standards that are laid out at the beginning of the program, like making sure you complete the minimum required course credits, maintaining a certain minimum GPA, not failing any of your core required courses, not seriously violating the regulations of YCA, PKU, or the laws of the People's Republic. And if you meet those standards, you apply for the second year funding and you will receive it. We have other funding opportunities as well. I think the most notable one in the first year is the Dean's Research Grant. This is a competitive grant for independent research for individual or groups of Yenching scholars. Second year, we offer teaching assistantships, office assistantships, residential assistantships, as well as opportunity grants, maybe to go present a paper at an academic conference. We might cover your travel and your living expenses, as well as a language enrichment fellowship. This is for continued intensive language study for international scholars. Generally, that's going to be Chinese, but not always. And for native Chinese speakers, that can be English or another foreign language. Okay, I'm going to need to spend a couple of minutes on this. Please look at these 6 research areas because they're very important to your academic experience here. Okay, I mentioned that we are part of defining what China Studies means within the system of degrees recognized by the Ministry of Education of China. This is how we've been able to fit China Studies, interdisciplinary China Studies, into their degree granting system. I think it might be what's called China within the disciplines, China studies within the disciplines. So these 6 research areas, you can see them here, are important to your academic experience in 3 main ways. First, at the application stage, you choose one of these research areas in which to conduct your master's thesis research when you apply to the program. And as part of our admissions review, we evaluate your academic training, your degree or degrees, courses you have taken, grades you've received in those courses, papers you've written. It could be for coursework, it could be for a publication, and any related professional experience or internship experience even, with an eye to evaluating whether or not we think you are prepared enough and reasonably set up for success conducting graduate level research at China's top university in the field that you have chosen. So for instance, I think, I'm not saying that you have to only apply to the research area for which you have a degree. What I am saying is if your degrees and your coursework in undergrad or perhaps your previous graduate study don't appear to be connected to the research area that you are choosing, then you need to anticipate that we'll have questions about that and try to address those questions in your application materials. For instance, if you are a comparative literature major, but you are applying for economics and management, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense looking at top line degree names. But perhaps you took a lot of courses, microeconomics, macroeconomics, statistical analysis, business management, just for your own interest, and you are interested in understanding the business of China's publishing industry. Okay, well, with that sort of description, that makes a lot more sense. And for instance, if you're applying for politics and international relations and you haven't, if you don't know some of the major theories of international relations, that will weaken your application. So apply for what you're interested in, what you love, but also please be strategic about it and know that we conduct this kind of academic review in the admissions process. Okay, second way this will affect your experience at YCA, choosing a thesis advisor at the end of your first year. You will need to have a thesis advisor who is an expert in one of the areas to which you're applying. So let's take law and society, for example. If you are interested in studying judicial reform in China in the last 20 years, well, then it makes a lot of sense that you should have a professor from the School of Law as your thesis advisor. But on the other hand, if you're interested in looking through a sociological lens at the changes to Chinese family structure in the context of the severe aging of China's population, well, then you'd probably want someone from the Department of Sociology, etc. And then finally, when you graduate, this is what will appear on your diploma. It'll say Peking University, Master of Economics, China Studies, Economics and Management. Peking University, Master of History, China Studies, History and Archaeology, etc. Give you a little bit of an overview of our core courses that all first-year Yenching scholars need to complete. In the upper left here, you can see China in Transition 1 and 2. This is a year-long 2-semester interdisciplinary look at contemporary China. The fall is structured in large lectures plus smaller breakout discussion sections, and it's co-taught by a team of top faculty at Peking University. We essentially have modules on Chinese politics, Chinese economics, Chinese society, etc. China in Transition 2 takes those same professors who co-taught the fall semester, and then they give you a full course that is connected to their research expertise and takes a more in-depth disciplinary dive into understanding contemporary China. So if you were interested in the Chinese economics module, you would choose one of the professors from that and would take a course that looks at economic analysis of China, and under the guidance of the professor, will design and carry out a field research project in broadly connected economics. So that is also designed to give you some on-the-ground experience of field research in China before your master's thesis research in year 2. The field study is a required course. It builds up to a week-long trip outside of Beijing, where all Yenching scholars, our faculty and staff, go to a different region or a different city around China and understand the geography, the ecology, the history, the culture, the economics, the political system, urban planning. It's a multifaceted look at a region outside of Beijing. It is an intense travel learning experience, but building up to it, you have lectures, you have assigned reading, sometimes films and documentaries to review, to prepare yourself for the trip. For the first few years, we took students to Xi'an in Shanxi province in sort of northwestern China. For the last several years, we've been taking students to Chengdu in Sichuan province and some areas just outside of Chongqing municipality in southwestern China. In the Topics in China Studies lecture series, we bring in leading figures, either at Peking University, academics, or in broader fields related to China studies. They could be business leaders, diplomats, officials, artists, you name it. And they come in and give a lecture about their research or about their experience in their career to give you a more multifaceted understanding of what can be done, what can be explored, what career paths can be available within the field broadly defined as China studies. So I hosted a China studies lecture last week. It was a really fascinating lecture by an assistant professor in the School of Government at PKU, looking at the political and economic negotiation that took place in determining where and when high-speed rail networks were going to be built over the last 20 years in China. So he was taking a political science perspective, and his key theoretical concept was localized bargaining. Fascinating lecture that really brought a lot of depth to what anyone who visits China and has the good fortune of riding on one of their efficient, fast, high-speed trains, a massive, massive infrastructure project. And he gives us an inside look at how it actually happened. Tomorrow, I'm hosting another Topics in China lecture series from Professor Cheng Lesong, who is an expert in the intellectual history of the Han Dynasty. So this is about the 400 years before and after the Common Era, as well as early Taoist intellectual and religious thought. So with those two, you get a sense of just how different our Topic in China Studies lectures can be. Then academic writing is a course that all Yenching scholars take. We bring in different PKU professors to give you some guidance and a sort of step-by-step process for conceptualizing, designing, carrying out a master's thesis research project, analyzing your data, drafting and defending your thesis. All international students are required to take Chinese as a second language, unless you have completed within the last 2 years the HSK level 6 test and have passed it. If so, you can then place out of Chinese as a second language courses. However, you are required to fulfill the same number of course credits, and we encourage you to do at least one course taught in Chinese in a different field. Here are the half of the electives taught by YCA in the 2022 to 2023 academic year. A couple of things I want to point out. So these are basically economics and social sciences, and the humanities are on the other slide. Two important things to point out. Although these are in columns that are entitled Politics and International Relations or Law and Society, you are not required to only take courses within the research area that you applied to. In fact, we encourage you to take courses outside of your research area. Here you can see the humanities broadly defined. I am teaching 2 courses in history and archaeology, the history of the field, sinology and China studies from a global perspective, and modern Chinese history will be in the spring. This is a seminar that is should be on a retrospective of the works of the late, great Yale professor, Jonathan D. Spence, and his unique way of narrating the history of late imperial and modern China. One of the unique parts of our academic structure is our advisor system. So you can see the departments and schools where 140 academic advisors are drawn from around the university. Most Yenching scholars will have 2 different advisors in their time here. The first year, the faculty advisor is there to essentially introduce you to the faculty community and academic life at Peking University. He or she will get to know your developing research interests, will counsel you on which courses you should take, both at YCA and other departments and schools. And even if this faculty member doesn't end up being an expert in the field or fields that you want to focus on, they will know who is. And one key role they play is introducing you to other faculty members who perhaps can mentor you in more direct ways. At the end of your first year, in conjunction with submitting your formal thesis proposal, you will determine your second year thesis advisor. Now, it's occasionally happens that first year faculty advisors become second year thesis advisors, and that's wonderful when it happens. We, however, don't require it. Okay, here you can see some of the scenes from our fall field study in Chengdu and Chongqing. I want to emphasize, yes, so we're going to Chengdu, you're going to eat spicy Sichuan cuisine. Of course, we have to take you to the pandas, but that's not what it's all about. We also take you to the Sanxingdui archaeological excavation site. Normal tourists go to the museum, and we will go to the museum. But because we are the Yenching Academy of Peking University, we actually go to the excavation site that is currently being excavated by a team of top archaeologists at PKU, among other top schools in China. Amazing access that you just don't get any other way. We also go to an unmanned aerial vehicle firm. We go to a fascinating firm that has a early warning system for natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, landslides. So it's really an interesting look at the different aspects of life, society, and the economy in Chengdu. This gentleman you can see here directly underneath the panda, Professor Cheng Le-song, is the Topics in China Studies lecture series tomorrow that I'm hosting. The Springfield study, this is part of China in Transition Part 2. You can see that scholars over the pre-pandemic years went to many different regions around China for site visits and field research. In addition, we encourage all of our elective course professors to integrate site visits and field research whenever possible and appropriate in their courses, all funded by Yenching Academy. Our good colleagues in the Student Affairs Office has also been continuously offering more support for career development for Yenching scholars. Here you can see a sharing session with at least a few Yenching alumni and different careers, generally at the early to middle stages of their career. We've also just implemented a professional advising system where you mutually choose an advisor who generally based in Beijing, just for convenience sake, but from different fields and different career paths. You can meet with them, learn about their experience, get help and advice in applying for a job, and perhaps do some professional shadowing. And after graduation, Yenching scholars are very successful, going on to interesting things in the next step in their either academic or professional careers. About 20% of Yenching scholars go into further graduate study, most of them at the doctoral level, but some to law school and even to med school. You can see some of the top universities that they've been to after graduation. Georgetown's on there, Gary, represent, go Hoyas. We also see some of the international organizations, consulting firms, et cetera, that Yenching scholars have moved into the professional phase of their career after graduation. The Yenching Global Symposium is our key flagship extracurricular event. It is a highly competitive, student-designed and student-led international China Studies conference. You can see some of the themes that were designed and carried out by students in the first 5 years of YCA. Last year's, or I guess this year, it's last academic year, but still this calendar year, the 2022 YGS was dealing with the issues of globalization and counter-globalization, the apparent reemergence of national power interests in a globalized world. Very, very fascinating. The last few YGSs have had to be online. We hope that we can return to an in-person Yenching Global Symposium in 2023, but we just have to see. Student visas are open. Tourist visas are not. So there, we would need to see a little bit more relaxation in terms of entry requirements into mainland China before we can feasibly return to an in-person YGS. I want to emphasize that the Yenching Global Symposium started out in 2016 as a few Yenching scholars brainstorming about what they might be able to use the platform of Yenching Academy for. They came up with this concept. They came to the administration with a plan, negotiations back and forth, and YGS was born. And now it's become a real treasured institution at the Yenching Academy. A little bit of stats about Yenching scholars. So over the first 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars, we've had just under 860 join us from 84 different countries and regions around the world. Here you can see a very, very top line bird's eye view of our regional distribution for Yenching scholars. Obviously, we have more work to do to increase enrollments from Africa and from Latin America. We're aware of that and we're working hard on it. Still, we are a highly diverse, multicultural student body. Over the first 8 years, these universities you see here have placed the highest number of graduates into YCA. So we've got Harvard, we've got Stanford, Princeton, Yale, looking at these sort of North American universities, Columbia as well. Most Yenching scholars, highest degree attained is a bachelor's degree, although a significant number have already 1 or more postgraduate degrees. That's generally going to be another MA or MSc, but some also have law degrees before joining the program. We welcome applicants both with a bachelor's degree or with previous postgraduate degrees. And then here you can see the breakdown of what the first 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars have chosen for their research areas. Obviously, politics and international relations and economics and management are by far the most popular. I want to emphasize 2 things, however. This is not planned, this distribution you see here. We don't have a quota system. We don't have a target for how many from which area. Obviously, I would like more students in the humanities. Since I am trained as an historian, I would love to see more historians join the program, but that's okay. What this represents is, in any given year, the research area chosen by the most talented, the most competitive applicants. In 2022, we have 111 scholars from 27 different countries and regions. You can see the regional and national breakdown there. And from 2022's cohort, we had scholars from 96 different universities. And these are the universities that place the highest number of graduates in our program in 2022. So the students who have either arrived on campus or in the process of getting here this fall. Okay, my final section is on applications. So what are we looking for? We're a highly competitive funded graduate program at China's top university. We expect academic excellence from our students when they're here, and we look for academic excellence in their materials. So a very, very strong academic record is more or less a prerequisite. But that's not all we're looking for. We are also interested in understanding who you are outside of the classroom. So if there are extracurricular activities that are important to you, to which you've dedicated a lot of time and maybe has shaped who you are as a young individual, we want to know about that. Are you an artist, a musician, an athlete? Have you started your own company? Are you committed to improving people's lives in the communities around you? These are things we want to hear about to get a better sense of who you are, but also to potentially understand how you might contribute to our program once you arrive here. Okay, because we're so multicultural and diverse as a student community, we look for and value students who have a demonstrated interest in and commitment to understanding people from different cultures, to cross-cultural communication, to multiculturalism in general. We also appreciate applicants who have a demonstrated interest in better understanding China, academically studying China. Now, if we like the fully formed China nerds coming out of college who maybe have majored in East Asian languages and literatures and a minor in economics with a focus on, China's economy, or someone who studied history and Chinese language in undergrad and is planning on becoming an academic. We want those kinds of students, but you don't have to be that kind of student in order to be considered. We also want students who have excelled in other academic fields or perhaps other economic or other professional endeavors, but at this point in their careers realize to get where they want to go, they need to better understand China, and they hope to utilize YCA as a platform for starting their formal intellectual engagement with China studies. So maybe someone has studied tech or AI, and you realize how big China's AI is currently and the prospects for it getting even more influential. You already know a bunch of the tech and the ethics of AI, but you don't know about it in China. That is a perfectly good reason for wanting to come to YCA to better understand a field you're already trained in and have experience in, but seeing how that field has grown and developed and what its prospects are in China. That's also a very convincing application portfolio. And so we welcome students like that as well. And just like any grad school application, you need to give us a well-articulated rationale for why China, why YCA, and why you. Okay, so we essentially have three different sort of application processes, and they are arranged regionally in essence. International students, applicants from the regions of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and applicants from mainland China, PRC citizens from mainland China. PRC citizens from mainland China are currently only able to apply through what's known as Tuimian, the exemption from the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination. What that means is you must be attending your bachelor's degree at a Chinese university, and through your performance, your Paiming or ranking, your GPA, and reviews by the faculty in the school or department where you're studying, qualify for direct application to graduate school without taking the Tongkao. Unfortunately, PRC citizens who have attended their or are attending undergraduate programs abroad are currently ineligible to apply. International students will apply through our application portal at yenchingacademy.pku.edu.cn. Applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan apply both to our direct application portal at the Yenching Academy's website, but also must apply to a separate application by the Peking University Graduate School that's specifically for what we call HMT applicants from those regions, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. The minimum requirement for consideration to enroll in 2023 is completing your bachelor's degree by the end of August of next year. Essentially, you can't go to grad school unless you've already finished your bachelor's degree. Okay, application information for international candidates. And then I'll tell you some of the changes, the slight alterations for HMT applicants. So if you are a direct applicant to our program, as in you are not a student or an alum of one of our partner universities, and our partner universities are listed on our website, please check. So if you are a direct applicant, the application window closes on November 27th, 2022, Beijing time, noon. Please be aware of the time differences. You'll apply online, fill out the online application form at yenchingacademy.netapply.cn. If you are not a native speaker of English and you are not studying or did not complete a degree program, bachelor, graduate, what have you, at an English taught university, then we will need to see a certificate of English proficiency, IELTS, Cambridge, TOEFL, etc. We need to see certificates of enrollment if you are currently enrolled, an official document from university registrar, and diplomas from all institutions of higher education from which you've graduated. We know a lot of students apply in their fourth year of their undergraduate program, so you're not graduated yet, no problem. When you graduate, if you're accepted, then we will need to see your diploma. So a certificate of enrollment from your registrar will be fine. We need official transcripts from all bachelor's and or postgraduate degree programs that you've attended. We need a personal statement in English, 750 words. This is your standard grad school application essay. Who you are, why you're interested in China studies, why you're interested in Yenching Academy, what you can contribute to the program, where you're going in your career, and how you think we can help you achieve that. And we have the statement of research interest. It's maximum 1,500 words, excluding citations. This is essentially your academic or research-focused introduction to the faculty of Yenching Academy at PKU. So we used to call this the research proposal, but we found that to be a little bit too restrictive. And not everyone has a 100% certain idea of what they want to study when they arrive at YCA for their master's degree, and that's okay. So we changed the name, made it a little bit longer to give you a little bit more leeway, a little bit more freedom to tell us who you hope to be as a young academic and as a young scholar. This statement of research interest, however, still is a formal piece of academic writing. You should include references to the relevant bodies of academic literature with which your proposed research project will engage, hence the hint, excluding citations, but you definitely should, anytime you're applying to a graduate school and you're talking about your research interest, you should certainly do so in reference to the key parts of the academic literature that you want to study and engage with. It can be about more than one, potential topic, but be careful with that. One or two is okay. It can be a general direction, that's fine. But if you talk about 5 or so different things, then you're in danger of spreading yourself too thin and not being able to show enough depth of engagement and understanding of any one of those. So I would recommend focusing on one general direction. We need your resume or CV, and we need 2 letters of recommendation. Very importantly, these must be academic references, and they must be from associate professors, full professors, or higher. This is the standard for top graduate schools in China. Unfortunately, assistant professors do not qualify. If you have an assistant professor, an internship supervisor, etc., someone who's interested and can write a good letter for you, we're happy to look at it and we will review it, but it can't replace these letters of recommendation. Okay, those are the application requirements for international applicants. Now for applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Almost everything is the same, except the 2 key differences. And these key differences are because we are matching up our application requirements from applicants from these regions with the PKU graduate school's application requirements, just so you don't have to prepare different documents. So certificate of English proficiency, there's a distinction here. If you have graduated from a university or graduate school that was taught in English, we then take your diploma from that university or graduate program as documentary proof that your English level is sufficient to join us and study with us in English. If you are still enrolled and have not graduated, then you will need to submit one of the English proficiency test scores, IELTS, TOEFL, Cambridge. This is aligned with PKU graduate school requirements. And then the other change, the letters of recommendation. They still must be academic and they still must be from associate professors, full professors, or higher. But also, they must be from professors teaching in the field to which you're applying. So if you are applying to law and society, you can't have an economist write it for you. You need to have a professor from a law school or a sociologist write one of the letters for you. Those are the two differences in application requirements. And remember, HMT applicants apply both to YCA and to the portal for Peking University Graduate School's HMT candidates. The deadline for that will be set by Peking University. If this fits your profile, please, please, please go to our website and read details about the PKU application requirement. Failure to submit the PKU application disqualifies you from consideration. Okay, that's all I have for you right now. I really appreciate your attention and your patience. If you have any questions, reach out to us at YCA admissions at PKU, YCA-admissions at pku.edu.cn. Go to our website, yenching.pku.edu.cn for Chinese, yenchingacademy.pku.edu.cn for English, and do your research. Look at our program, look at our faculty, see how we structure the program, and most importantly, look at the profiles of current Yenching scholars. I think this will build your confidence. You'll see that, you know, we aren't looking for one type or category or profile of applicant. We're not a one-size-fits-all program. We're not looking for a one single profile of an applicant. I think you'll see that not only are we diverse culturally, nationally, regionally, but also in terms of different levels of engagement with China before they come to YCA, different academic focus, different professional experiences. And then you can find us on all the standard social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and WeChat. Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience. Now we have, we can hand it over to our alumni. I see Emily is here. Emily, are you ready to go ahead since you were from the 2018 cohort and Gary is from the 2019 cohort? I was thinking we might go with the earlier graduate first.
Sure, yes. Are you guys able to hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Let me stop sharing now.
Okay,
there we go.
Perfect. All right, so first of all, apologies for hopping on a couple minutes late, and apologies for potentially my audio and my video at the moment. I flubbed the time difference with Beijing and the East Coast, so I'm actually in a car at the moment. But as is a theme in the slides that I'm about to discuss, it's all about rolling with the punches and working with what you got. So I'll just dive on in. So I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018 and then went directly to YCA afterwards. At Notre Dame, I was closer on the spectrum to what Brent described as like a fully formed China nerd. My majors were anthropology and Chinese, and then my minors were business econ and the Glenn Family Honors Program. I was also part of the Hesburgh-Usco Scholars Program, so I had opportunities over the summers to spend a good amount of time in China, in addition to studying abroad in Shanghai in my junior year. So I knew that I was really deeply interested in China. It had already been an area of academic focus for me. So when I learned about YCA and the opportunity to apply, it was a pretty obvious top choice for me in what I wanted to do coming out of school. So personally, I felt like I wasn't quite done with China, even though I'd been able to go kind of for 3 extended periods of time in my undergrad. I felt like I hadn't quite finished what I wanted to do in terms of engagement with the culture and the language and the study of the country. In addition to that, I love being abroad. I love traveling. I wanted kind of more experience, finding out if kind of living in a foreign country and working in a foreign country was what I wanted to do with my life. And YCA was a really strong opportunity for that as well. And in my previous trips to China, I had always felt like it was a country that made me a better person. And seeing how such a large percentage of the world's population lives made me better understand, you know, where kind of I fit into the human experience and the way that I live my life and, you know, I understand things culturally isn't always the correct way, or there's more than one correct way to do it. So I really loved that challenge and that learning process of being in the country. And then lastly, I'm a big adventure junkie. I love to try new things. And YCA is a really, really once in a lifetime unique experience. So I absolutely could not turn down the opportunity to apply and then to attend. If we could, yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, so going over my highlights of my time there. So I was intending to be on campus for the full 2 years, but was cut short, unfortunately, with my last semester with the pandemic, which was also a very unique experience to kind of watch that unfold with myself and my Chinese classmates and my foreign classmates. But while I was able to be on campus, some of the highlights that I had when I was there was getting to experience the really diverse viewpoints of a lot of my classmates and kind of all the different perspectives that we would bring from our own upbringing or our own cultures into the discussions that we had in the classroom. That was something that really I would not have been able to replicate anywhere else. And I still think about a lot of times different comments that my classmates made to me, whether there was in relations to a specific academic topic that we were discussing, or just kind of in day-to-day situations, just about different ways to approach problems, right, or think about things, or solve for answers where maybe we come up with very different ideas of what that looks like. I was also the captain of our women's basketball team, which was awesome, and was a really awesome way to kind of exchange culture with the broader PKU community, because YCA is YCA is an international college within a wider university. So a lot of the other colleges that we played at PKU were entirely Chinese, and it was a really great way to get to know other PKU students and kind of use basketball as a way to, kind of share our differences. Learned a couple curse words as well, which was entertaining, if not why I set out to play. But also a great way to bond with my fellow cohort members, and kind of all of us, be working towards a common goal, and trying to share, what we knew of the sport or what we liked of the sport, with other people who also loved to play. I was able to do an internship in my second year. It was with the app Didi Chuxing, which anyone that's been in China is familiar with that ride-hailing app. So I actually worked for the English language version of the app on their marketing team. And that was also an incredibly unique experience, because within that team, there were only 2 foreigners and I was one of them, right? And it was the team that I was on was in charge of creating all of the English language marketing content. So it was really incredible, the stuff that I got to do as just an intern, whereas in the States, like interns, you don't get to touch as much stuff. But at Didi, for example, I got to put together a marketing campaign. And then a week later, I was back on campus and someone opened their phone to catch a ride, and my marketing campaign pops up in the app. And I was like, oh, wow, that's incredible. Like that was my exact reach that brought this to people's phones. So that was something that was really cool, and also not necessarily something that I would have been able to do just working for a US company back at home. Finally, my thesis and the research opportunities that I had at YCA were also 2 of my academic highlights there. So I studied the economics and management track, and skipping to my bottom bullet here, my thesis was about analyzing Didi's global strategy to increase their market share, which kind of tied in the time that I'd spent interning at Didi, along with some classes that I had taken looking at kind of Chinese entrepreneurial thought, and kind of the Chinese approach to different business strategies, and kind of the way that Didi was looking to expand into international markets as a top global ride-hailing player in the world. So that was something that was really interesting to study, presented its own challenges in doing so, as we were kind of gearing up for the pandemic and making that work remotely. But my thesis advisor, Professor Lin, was really great about making that work for me and making sure that I could still be engaged with my topic and my research, even from afar. So in terms of research, the Cit Research Project that I was able to do was actually one of my favorite things that I did in all of my time in China. And my group was specifically looking at cooperation between a private social enterprise and the government in an area that was particularly impoverished, mainly stemming from the fact that it was an area that had a lot of nomadic yak herders that were kind of making the transition to what I'll call like sedentary life. and in seeing kind of what this private enterprise was doing to provide jobs for these people, but also to keep the jobs centered on the yak and the importance of the yak within the culture of the area and within people's lives, was also incredibly fascinating, and how that kind of coincided with what the government was trying to do in providing housing, and trying to help these people adjust to this major life swing of, being a nomadic herder to, having a not necessarily like a 9-to-5 job, right? But totally changing their way of life. And then also fascinating to see kind of the ways that this private enterprise, was aligned with the goals of the government and the ways that they were able to kind of work together. But then also kind of some of the areas that potentially it was less harmonious in what they were looking for. All right, and then finally for my last slide, I am now working full-time after YCA. I took some time off with the pandemic to kind of be with my family and thoroughly job hunt and make sure that I landed in the place that I wanted to be. So I work at a very small investment firm called Long Path Partners. We are certainly not big enough yet to have a logo on the slide of famous places that PKU people or YCA graduates go and work, but we'll get there one day. And within my firm, I handle operations and client service. So technically in the role that I'm in now, there's not a huge amount of crossover between China. Like, we don't invest in China. China expertise is not necessarily something that I'm exercising on a daily basis there. But the skills that I was able to kind of practice and exercise every day at YCA are some of the most important things that I bring to this role. So one of those, for example, would be communication, right? It's at YCA every day, I had to practice making sure that I was communicating clearly and effectively to people that, maybe weren't used to using the same language that I was using, or if I was speaking my second language, and making sure that we could both get our points across in a way that was effective, but also respectful. Pattern recognition and kind of being thrown into a new environment where you're not sure how things work and having to kind of sit and study that and just learn through doing. And then critical thinking, and as I just explained, working through ambiguity, were a couple of the other items that I had to do every single day in China in a variety of very different situations, but something that I use every single day in my role, and something that I continually receive feedback that I'm exceptionally strong in those areas, and I credit that entirely to my time at YCA. So in tips for anyone that's looking to apply, I didn't put this on the slide, but the first one would be definitely do it. In thinking through your research, I would really encourage you to dream big and to not be limited by thinking, oh, that would be really difficult to study. Oh, I'm not totally sure if that would work out. Oh, I'm not smart enough to do this. I would say toss out your limits and really think about, if I could study anything that I wanted in China, what would I choose to do? And then just run with that idea. So as Brent explained, it's really important to draw on, where you've previously studied, where you have kind of that knowledge that you can bring to this type of research, or where you already have demonstrated interest. But at the same time, YCA gives you really unique opportunities and resources as through the program, but also through being part of PKU, where you'll have opportunities to really push that research and see that research through in a way that you wouldn't be able to in any other university in the world. So making sure also that you focus in China. Why is it important that you're doing your research in China? Brent is totally correct when he says there's no one size fits all Yenching Academy scholar, but it's really important to craft, the story of what you're interested in, and then also why it's important specifically that you are at Peking University and you're part of Yenching Academy rather than, at any other university in the world. My second tip for applying would be to prepare to kind of choose your own adventure. One of the greatest strengths of YCA, and also kind of one of the greatest challenges that I faced, was that you do have a lot of flexibility and responsibility. in kind of guiding your own academic trajectory and research. And that's something that if you go into it with that knowledge and ready to embrace the ability to shape kind of what you want your time at YCA to look like, you can really get a lot out of it. And then finally, my last tip would be to get gritty. As anyone that's traveled abroad before knows, it can be really difficult to be living and working in a foreign environment, and that comes with its own host of challenges. But what's important, and I think where a lot of personal growth comes, is from facing those challenges kind of day in and day out, and learning how to be persistent and resilient in the face of adversity that you can't really, there's no real way to prepare for it. And sometimes no way to even know what to expect until you're in the middle of it. But in the end, it really ultimately results in, some of the best memories that you'll have. So I look back really fondly on my time at YCA. I'd really heavily encourage people to apply. And I'd be happy to help if anybody has questions or if anybody wants to reach out to me after this info session. I'd definitely be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. I really hope you're not driving. You said you were in a
I was
car.
actually, so this is what happened. I was driving. I thought this info session was 9 a.m. tomorrow. So I blocked off my work calendar. I'm driving back to my apartment tonight and I was getting gas and I saw a WeChat from Michelle Lauscher and she's like, oh, are you going to pop into the Zoom? And I was like, oh no. So my brother's driving and navigating and doing all of that. So all safe. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, Emily. A great presentation as always. Gary, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Dean Haas. And I gotta confess though, I was really happy that Emily went first because she was actually my RA for my year. So I wanted to make sure that if she tells the truth about how much of a troublemaker I was during that time, I could still defend myself. But good thing that her brother's driving, so I don't have to do all of that. So my name is Gary. I was the year after Emily in 2019. I'm from Canada. So if any Canadians are in the chat, please let me know. As Dean Haas mentioned, I did my bachelor's in international political economy at Georgetown University. For those of you who might not have heard of Georgetown, our alumni includes President Bill Clinton, King Abdullah II of Jordan, and then the admissions dean of a very prestigious program in China. So Hoya Seksa to you, Dean Haas as well. For my undergrad, I was part of the SFS, the School of Foreign Service Centennial Fellow. And then for my internship before YCA, I had a stint at the US Senate. I was working at Brookings Institution with the China Center there. And then I did a research internship and then later external consultancy for the OECD's Trade and Agricultural Directorate, focusing on natural resources. And then just before I went to YCA, I did a summer of short-term consultant at the World Bank's office in Beijing. I was working again on natural resources, especially with Mongolia and then renewable energy in China as well. And then at Peking University, I did an internship at the Institute of New Structural Economics. After YCA, I went back to school again. So I did graduate studies at Cambridge. And then I was also a visiting fellow at the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies, doing research on China's energy future. And then now I'm being an advisor at the Ministry of Natural Resources in Canada, which reminds me to say, I have to say this, that the view discussed today is my view only and does not represent the government of Canada's. So my motivation for applying to YCA, in my undergrad, I became very interested in environmental economics. And it's really hard to talk about environment and all sort of different things in the world as well, without understanding China, because at least on the energy side, China is the world's biggest polluter, but also is one of the most aggressive drivers of renewable technology and adopting renewables. And I was really drawn to different perspectives. My experience as Yenching scholar, so I just want to share kind of two little stories about things that really stood out to me. So the first was in my first year at Yenching, during October, which is China's National Day, you have a week of vacation. And out of all the places, we went to Anyang, which if you have never heard about it, don't worry, it's a very small town in Henan. And it used to be the capital of China during the Shang Dynasty 3,000 years ago. But right now, it's more of a quiet little town. And we went there because a group of 6 or 7 of us just didn't really want to stay in a big city like Beijing during the Golden Week, as it's known in China about the National Day. And we want to go somewhere that is very different and has a small town vibe. So we went and stayed at this Airbnb. And the Airbnb were ran by a couple of students who went to a local school, Anyang Normal University, Anyang Shifan Xueyuan. And then it looked something like this, right? So it was in a back valley, and then if you walk around 10 minutes, you can go into the school over there. And then halfway through, they said, well, we're gonna go hiking in one of the mountains. Do you want to join us? And we said, really? Like, do we pay for this? This is not part of the Airbnb, right? They said no, but just for free, do you want to join us? So we said yes. And then we had a really wonderful time in Taihangshan, one of the mountains over that had a revolutionary history in China as well. And then they took a picture of us at the top of the mountain. And when we came back, we said, oh, that's very nice that our Airbnb host did that to us. We're going to give them a 5-star, but that was, very, very friendly. And then later we found out that they actually posted that to their social media and said, Peking University did an event with our Airbnb at this revolutionary location. And so I'm not sure how it played out, but I think Yenching Academy should have asked them for some sponsorship money, but apparently, we both benefited. But I also had a very good time over there as well for 2 reasons. So one was that before going there and meeting these people from the Airbnb, and they were in their 20s and 30s, and studying to become teachers at the Anyang Normal University. I always understood that there's a very popular word in Chinese called 内卷, right? Which I don't know how to translate it, but essentially it means that in much of China, there is a singular definition of success. That you did very well in school, and then you went to a top university like Peking University, and then you graduated, and either you're in finance or in academia, or you're a bureaucrat, and then you have a very successful career. And the people that I saw at Anyang, they were clearly outsider to this definition of success. Well, because they're from a little town, they did not go to a 985 or 211 school, right? They were small business owners, and they really have no prospect of ever making it to large cities like Beijing or Shanghai, let alone Zhengzhou. But at the same time, they were very happy. And to be honest, they were happier than some of the people that I met on campus in Peking University, who by Chinese definition should embody what success is by the definition of the word in Chinese. And I had a real think about it. Why is it that people that were more successful did not seem happy, but these people seem very happy? And later, especially with the pandemic, I spent the last 3 semesters of Yenching Academy online. And I had to go through a lot of remorse, but also it was difficult to do school online, and I really miss my friends, as I'm sure we all do. But that kind of experience really helped me rethink about how happiness is, and it also, on the other side, it really humanized China for me, because for me at least, I spoke Chinese and my parents, our family has a background in China. But at the same time, much of my understanding of China has been confined to images of the big city, right? Like the shining skylights of Shanghai and Beijing, and to a lesser extent, Guangzhou and Hong Kong and all the different major cities. And my conception of people in these cities are they're under so much pressure and they're try hard, they're really trying to make things work. But the people that I saw at Anyang were very relaxed. And for me, it just humanized my impression of China and Chinese society. And it showed that at the end of the day, no matter if you're a foreigner or Chinese, and if you live in a large city or in a small city and wherever around the world, we're still human and when we still believe in the same thing. So I don't know, like that was just a big moment for me, and to realize that what my preconceptions about China was very wrong. I had some couple photos in there. Like these were the 6 of us who went to Anyang together. And then this was our Airbnb over here. And then the second biggest thing I learned from Yenching Academy was what I really liked about it is you can take courses from different departments within campus. So I decided to jump into sociology and take a course on social policy in Qing Dynasty in China. And this is a really weird perspective as well. So sorry, Dean Haas and Michelle and Emily and everyone on the floor if this becomes weird. But I did international relations at Georgetown, and every student of international relations, when you go in, you were told that there are 3 grand theories of international relations. There's realism, liberalism, and constructivism. Now, the first 2, realism and liberalism, was explained quite well, right? Realism is you don't have rules in international relations and power is rule. And then liberalism is it's all about institutions. We need to create these democratic or peaceful institutions. And then constructivism is kind of glided over. How my professor used to describe it was, just think of it as people with ideas and ideals. So I remember asking my professor, oh, does that mean, religious ideals? Like can fundamental Islam be part of constructivism? The professor's like, not really quite there. And so I felt like my entire undergraduate degree, I understood realism and liberalist ideals very well. I never really understood what constructivism is. And then I went to China, which had a very different, take on world. And what I learned was, different perspectives on social structure and how we construct our ideals. This could be Marxist ideals, or it could be Chinese, Confucius traditional ideals, or it could be different ideals from all sort of different ways. And so personally, I felt like Yenching had a very multidisciplinary approach that opened me to all sort of possibilities that I did not really learn in my undergrad. But that's not to say that my undergrad, it could be just me not understanding what the professor said. And so in conclusion, like both of these two, right, it just opened me to different perspective, seeing different people and having ideas coming at me from places that I never expected to. And I really enjoyed Yenching. My research ended up being more quantitative than talking about social structure or constructivism. That's what I'm kind of moving more into now, into a constructivist view of energy and how social structure shapes our path to energy transition. But at that time, I was writing on are Chinese municipal leaders incentivized to improve environmental quality? And so very quickly, it was just talking about what kind of political economy was there to incentivize local leaders in China to adopt environmental conservation that may or may not be at the cost of economic development. Suggestions, just 3 very broad ones. You want to think about why China. You want to think about why YCA program in particular, and you want to think about why me. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, you just want to be very authentic and get yourself out. I think Dean Haas already mentioned that one of the things that I really, you know, like that the admissions office is looking for, but I really found as true within my cohort of Yenching is that people are multidisciplinary, right? They're coming at things with different perspectives, and they're not only siloing themselves to say, okay, I'm an economist, I'm a sociologist. They're bringing in different perspectives. And I think that if you could show how you are also a, you know, disciple of this multidisciplinary approach, I'm sure that that might not only be helpful for your application, but in the case of me, you can learn more about yourself and the world around you. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Gary. I think your comment about learning more about how constructivism works and how it's conceptualized was changed by your time over here and the way that Chinese academics approach IR, and in many ways approach a lot of their disciplines in ways that aren't exactly matches from what our potential applicants might have experienced at their home universities in the West or in other places around the world is a good one. I think a lot of applicants and a lot of students who come here say one thing they were most interested in is learning a different perspective. The general, if we can call it the Chinese perspective, but I'd like to narrow that down a little bit more. Say perhaps, Chinese academic perspectives on IR or Chinese academic perspectives on Chinese history. Is always a real big selling point for students coming into the program. And it's something that I and my students in my course, History of the Field, Sinology and China Studies from a global perspective, are talking about. There has been a movement in the last 10, 15 years where Chinese academics, either in mainland China or of Chinese heritage in different areas and as part of the diaspora, are questioning the legitimacy of sinology as a system of knowledge production and the area studies model for China studies that was created in the US in the 1950s and 1960s and is, of course, tied to Cold War US strategic interests. And they're questioning that, there is a debate academically, can theories that were based on European or Western experience and developed into universalizing social scientific theories accurately describe or be applied to the Chinese lived experience in whatever field you're thinking of? And there's some very strong critiques coming from Chinese academics on that. On the other hand, there is a debate that, is this taking the understanding of China back to a universalized totality that you can only understand China through Chinese perspectives? Are academic theories that were developed outside of China completely useless in describing this variation of a human society? I think that debate is a very interesting one, and it's not resolved. So if any of the applicants or potential applicants in today's session make it into the program, I hope you're aware of this and are excited about engaging with these kinds of intellectual constructs and with these kinds of debates and discussions. Thanks, Gary. That was hilarious. You putting me in in a grouping with two other Georgetown alumni. Very over the top, but funny. My first year, let me think. No, my first 3 years at Georgetown, Bill Clinton was still president. And the first time he came to the campus, I thought, oh, this is exciting. By the fifth time, it was like, oh, okay, there's snipers on the university buildings. The president must be here again. It got a little bit less exciting. But thank you, Emily, and thank you, Gary, for both of your wonderful and different presentations about your experience applying and being a Yenching scholar and what you're doing now. And Gary, don't worry, I don't think anyone is thinking that your presentation represents the official position of the Canadian government. I'd like to once again thank Emily Vincent and Gary Xie for joining us. Thank our participants for joining. I thank you for your interest in Yenching Academy. I wish you good luck, and I hope to see your application soon. And with that, we'll go ahead and end today's open information session. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Emily. Have a good day.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.